It all started on a chilly October evening. The air outside carried a certain weight, as though the cold winds whispered secrets no one dared to hear. I was in my final year of college, struggling to balance my projects, classes, and an internship. The college library, with its dimly lit corners and labyrinth of shelves, had become my second home. Unlike most students who left the campus by 8 p.m., I preferred staying late. The library had a peculiar charm and eerie silence that allowed me to focus better. That day, I arrived around 7 p.m., ready to dive into my thesis research. The library was unusually empty, even for a weekday. Only the librarian, an old man with a face carved by wrinkles, sat at his desk, lost in a thick book. I settled into my favorite spot at the far end of the library, near the section with dusty, untouched archives. The room smelled of aged paper, and the faint sound of the ticking clock echoed in the stillness. Hours passed as I buried myself in work, unaware of how the library seemed to grow quieter with each passing minute. At some point, I glanced up and noticed the librarian was gone. I checked my watch. It was nearing midnight. I decided to finish one last section of my research before heading out. That's when I heard it. A faint, rhythmic tapping sound coming from the aisle behind me. At first I dismissed it as a book shifting or a pipe creaking, but the sound grew louder, deliberate, as if someone was knocking on the shelves. I turned around, scanning the dimly lit aisle. Nothing, just rows of books staring back at me. I chuckled nervously, blaming my overworked mind. But then it happened again. Tap, 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 this time closer. My heart raced. "Is someone there?" I called out, trying to sound calm. Silence. Gathering courage, I stood and walked toward the sound. The aisle was empty, yet the tapping resumed, this time echoing from the opposite end of the library. It felt as though I was being led somewhere. Reluctantly, I followed the sound, which led me to the archives section. The air here was colder, and the lights flickered faintly. In the corner of the room, I noticed something odd, a book lying open on the floor. The book's cover was blank, and its pages were filled with strange symbols and drawings. As I flipped through, I felt an overwhelming sense of dread. The drawings depicted shadowy figures, a clock stuck at midnight, and a small girl standing in what looked like this very library. The tapping returned, louder now, coming from behind the shelves. I dropped the book and backed away. Suddenly, the lights flickered violently, plunging the room into darkness. In the pitch-black silence, I heard it, a faint giggle. My blood ran cold. I fumbled for my phone, using its flashlight to scan the room. Standing a few feet away was a figure, a girl no older than 10. Her hair was disheveled, and she wore a tattered white dress. Her eyes glowed faintly in the dark. Who are you?" I stammered. She didn't answer, just pointed toward the book on the floor. When I glanced back, she was gone. I picked up the book, now open to a page that showed a drawing of a large clock tower with an ominous figure standing at its base. Scribbled beneath it were the words, "Midnight will reveal the truth." Panicking, I decided it was time to leave. As I made my way toward the exit, I heard footsteps behind me, slow and deliberate. Every time I turned around, there was nothing. I quickened my pace, nearly breaking into a run when the door slammed shut in front of me. A cold gust of wind swept through the room, carrying with it the sound of whispers. They grew louder, overlapping, until it was a deafening roar. "Stop this!" I yelled, covering my ears. The whispers ceased, replaced by the same giggle I'd heard earlier. The clock on the wall struck midnight, and the air grew heavy. I felt a presence behind me, but didn't dare turn around. Instead, I sprinted toward the emergency exit, only to find it locked. Cornered, I clutched the strange book tightly and whispered, "What do you want from me?" The room grew unnaturally cold, and a voice echoed, soft yet chilling. "Find me." "What does that mean?" I screamed, but there was no reply. The lights flickered back on, and the library returned to its usual quiet state. Exhausted and terrified, I made my way home, clutching the book. Sleep evaded me that night as I stared at the drawings, trying to decipher their meaning. The next day I returned to the library, determined to find answers. I showed the book to the librarian, who paled upon seeing it. He explained that the book belonged to a girl who used to visit the library decades ago. She had vanished mysteriously, and legend had it that her spirit haunted the archives. I sprinted towards home, my heart racing faster with each step. The eerie silence of the street seemed heavier than ever. Just as I reached the gate to my house, I froze. There, in the distance, I saw her again. The strange woman with her twisted form, standing beneath a dim streetlight, her head tilted unnaturally as if she was looking right at me. I turned to unlock the door, fumbling with my keys, but the sound of her limping steps drew closer. My breathing quickened. With trembling hands, I finally got the door open and slammed it shut behind me, bolting it tightly. I collapsed on the floor, gasping for air, when I heard the faintest knock at the door. It was soft, yet deliberate. Summoning my courage, I peeked through the peephole, but no one was there. Just as I turned away, I heard her chilling voice. "She's here. My daughter is here." I backed away, every hair on my body standing on end. Suddenly, the lights flickered, and the house grew unbearably cold. The whispers began again, surrounding me. I closed my eyes, covering my ears, and screamed for it to stop. When I opened my eyes, everything was still. The lights returned to normal, and the oppressive silence was gone. I mustered the courage to check the door again, and this time there was no one there. Just the empty street illuminated by the pale glow of the street lamp. The next morning, I learned from a neighbor that decades ago, a grieving mother had been seen wandering the area, searching for her daughter who tragically passed away. To this day, they say her spirit haunts the streets, forever seeking a reunion that will never come.